I had always wanted to find a key moment in history and do a deep dive into all of the decisions that were made, all of the characters who played a part, but what key moment? In early 2019, Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, invited several reporters over for a briefing in her hideaway, and she said, this is the room where Harry Truman got a call on April 12, 1945, telling him to come right to the White House. Jesus Christ and General Jackson, she said, Truman had exclaimed, and it turned out that was the day that FDR died and Truman became president. And suddenly I thought, that's the key moment. Truman becomes president, and 116 days later, he drops the bomb on Hiroshima. There was a lot of research into these 116 days. I first went to the Truman Library and found a lot of information, but the real treasure trove were the letters that Truman wrote to his wife Bess, to his daughter, to his mother and sister, in which he described what he was feeling, what he was experiencing at the time he was making this enormous decision. He also kept a very good diary, and especially when he got to Potsdam and was holding the summit with Churchill and Stalin, he wrote about a lot of the stress he was feeling about making this enormous decision whether or not to drop the first atom bomb. There were all kinds of surprises that we discovered in our research. I think one of the big ones was the fact that Harry Truman had been vice president for 3 months, but when he becomes president on April 12th, he doesn't know anything about the Manhattan Project. He doesn't know anything about the atom bomb. The Secretary of War, Henry Stimson, takes him aside that day, just moments after he's been sworn in as president, and tells him about this existence of this extraordinary new weapon. Doesn't tell him any more for 12 days. My favorite character is Hideko Tomura, who was just 10 years old and on the ground in Hiroshima when the bomb dropped. Most of her family was either killed or just paralyzed by the shock. She left the house by herself, remembered what her mother had told her, because they were doing a lot of bombings, not of atom bombs, but regular bombs across Japan, and she had been told, first, if there's an explosion, hang on to something to make sure that the house doesn't collapse on you, and then immediately leave the house and head to the river, the Ota River in Hiroshima, so you can avoid any fire. And she did that. What I especially was fascinated about Hideko Tomura, she's still alive 75 years later, and I got to meet her, and I even took her out because she wanted to see it, to the Air and Space Museum, to see the Enola Gay, the bomber, the B-29, that dropped the atom bomb on Hiroshima, and to see her for the first time, the weapon of destruction that killed her mother, that destroyed her family, that destroyed her city, was a deeply emotional and moving experience. What can we still learn 75 years later from Hiroshima? Well, I keep thinking back. I covered Ronald Reagan for 6 years in the White House, and there was something that he used to say during the height of the Cold War when he was facing down the Soviets, and we had weapons pointed at them, and they had weapons pointed at us. Reagan used to say, a nuclear war can never be won and must never be fought. And if there's one thing you take away from these 116 days from countdown 1945, it is that there have only been 2 bombs that were dropped within days of each other in Japan in 1945, first on Hiroshima, then on Nagasaki. We are still paying a price for that in terms of the tremendous human damage, in terms of the moral arguments 3/4 of a century later. Reagan was right. A nuclear war can never be won and must never be fought.